Good morning and welcome to the Find It with Fines session. In a little bit, we're going to be hearing from Deb Svec, Toni Lipscher, and John Long, but first some housekeeping. Use the chat box to communicate with us. Click like and subscribe, and just know that the moderators have wrenches. So on to the Find It with Fines session. Welcome to John Long.
Hi, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to Session A. We really appreciate you being here today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kick it into high gear with what is fines and talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk to you and give you a secondary perspective and an elementary perspective because it looks different can't even talk this morning, depending on what grade levels you're talking about. And we'll actually break that down into a couple of examples. So we're going to get started. And let's first of all talk about what is fines. Well, fines is a research model that was designed by FAME, which is the Florida Association for Media and Education. Oh my gosh, it's been over 15 years ago. I remember fines being talked about back in the 2000s. And so it could have been developed before then. I just don't know. And then last summer, the Department of Education for Florida decided to revise it. And they actually created a matrix. And our friend Lisa Seymour, who just introduced us, was on the committee. And we had a high school representative too. And that website right there actually takes you to their documents that they created. They created a matrix, aligning it to the best standards and stuff like that. But we wanted to take it a step further and talk about how to actually use it with technology tools and what that actually looks like for implementing it. So we're going to have lots of examples and we're going to share with you some ideas and stuff like that. Feel free to add your ideas on how you teach fines in your classroom or in your media center in the chat. So feel free to add comments as you go along. And I see some comments are already there. That's great. So feel free to do that. So let's talk about what is fines. Well, we're in education so fines is basically an acronym, and it basically stands for focus, investigate, note, I like to say note taking, develop, and self-evaluate. So we're going to kick it off into the secondary gear, and we're going to talk to our friend Deb Svec, who's at Gardens High School. She couldn't be with her live, so she and I had a conversation about implementing at the secondary level. Feel free to add your questions in the chat, and we'll be glad to answer them as soon as we can. All right, so let's go to Deb and talking about the secondary version.
Hi, I'm Deb Svec, and I am the media specialist here at Palm Beach Gardens High School. This is actually my 18th year at Palm Beach Gardens High School.
All right, so we're going to go through the secondary fines model. My name is John Long from Education Technology, and we'll start going by each letter. So we're going to start with the F. So Deb, we wanted to make sure that this started with literature. And so can you tell us a little bit about why we picked Dreamland Burning?
I was actually in the classroom talking to them about how to access MEC and VIA, the district standard for our digital content or ebooks. And in book talking, I started talking about Dreamland Burning, and the students were extremely interested in it and actually asked their instructor, Miss Wade at the time, if they could substitute that book. So that's how we ended up with Dreamland Burning. It's historical fiction, and it talks about the race riots in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which the students didn't know very much about, and they were extremely interested in it. And the book is great because it goes between right now to high school students and the events that really happened that led up to those riots. So it was an engaging way for them to learn very relevant history. And it was full of a lot of other side things in the novel. Different things about, there's one of the moms is a Native American, and it was all concerned with her about how she wasn't even allowed to own land back in that time, that period of history. So it wasn't just about the riots and how that came to be, but it was a lot of history that was offshoots of that. So it kept their engagement all the way through the end of the book. And the book really has quite a shocking ending. So it was a very engaging, wonderful book for them to do this project with, all the way through the Finds project.
So basically what happened is based on the book and the topics that were based in the book, some of the themes, like you mentioned Native Americans, that was one of the themes, but some of the race riots and some of those events, as well as the KKK, and those things, those were topics that the students decided to do their research on, and that became their focus. And some of them had to readjust their focus based on the amount of information they could find. And so that was basically the focus. And I want to point out that for those of you that like to have copies of everything we talk about, this is going to be on the website. So if you go to bit.ly/PBC Finds, you'll find this overview as well as everything else, including some of the training videos that we did for that piece. And going on, we'll go to the next letter, which is the I for investigate. And when we get to investigate, there's a lot going on to the piece of the puzzle here. So one of the things we were talking about is how to start with searches. And we started with, well, everybody's favorite search engine, Google, because it was like that. And so we taught them how to do proper searches in Google, not just for simple searches, but doing complex searches using the Boolean operators. And the idea was to get them to narrow down their searches from 1 billion hits to maybe several hundred or even less than 100 hits, and using the Boolean operators to actually reduce that. We also had, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, not only that, but then their other favorite thing, the crap test to what they found, whether it was at Google or on the databases, they had to use a crap test to decide if it was relevant, authoritative. So that was also another learning tool, which a lot of them, of course, had never heard of. So it was a really good learning process all the way through. Each thing they did was a whole new world to them. So
we also showed them various databases. And do you want to kind of talk about some of the databases?
So we did show them the district databases and how to navigate them and how to use those to narrow the information. What are you really looking for? Going from a very broad topic and narrowing it down to the specific information that they were looking for, and how it applied to which part of the book their group decided to research and present on. And then not only, like you said, not only how to use the Boolean operators to narrow their search, but then once they found the information, was it concurrent? Was it accurate? And how did it really apply to the overall presentation they were doing as it correlated and was relevant to the actual book?
And for those that might know, the crap test was shared by one of our colleagues at the Palm Beach State College, Professor Rochelle Harris. She shared with the crap test because she uses that, and it's a source for how to authenticate their literature that they're looking for, their research. And so that's a great resource for your high school, secondary students to use. So as we move forward, we're going to move on to the next letter in our finds. And that is for notes. I like to say note taking, but it's notes. So in this resource, we wanted to show digital resources they could use. We showed them how to use things like Google Keep and Google Docs to take notes. And you'll see some examples of Google Keep and how they could just take their Google Keep and just take that stuff and change it over into the Google Docs, because they were going to do a project in Adobe Express, which we'll get to a little bit later. And this is just some quick ways to actually organize their research. Deb, you want to highlight anything with the note taking?
Well, I think the first tendency for all students is to copy and paste in their notes. So even though that's possible to do with the note taking, then to go through the notes, actually read them. So reading them, then reducing them and revisiting them so that they understand that the note is not a copying pasting so that your instructor can read everything. The notes are you putting together your new knowledge in a way that you can present it out in a project or verbally or however you're doing it. So the whole note-taking exercise was extremely beneficial, not only in this class, but I think for the students in all of their classes.
Right. And so we wanted to make sure that they cite their resources. They wanted to make sure that they were doing the citations right and using the tools in Google Docs to kind of organize their stuff before they get to the develop thing. One more thing we wanted to add is that we gave them a resource. Well, actually, we came up with this after the fact of the 4 C's of note taking. And I was starting to think about how can we keep this simple, because we can't assume that every kid knows how to note take. Everyone kind of assumes that every kids know how to do that. Do they really? So we came up with the 4 C's. Capture. That's just grab the resource, because everyone likes to screenshot, copy, paste, grab the link, grab a video, grab a document. Can they comprehend what they're viewing? That's a good question in these days. Can they really comprehend what they're writing and stuff like that, the notes they take? Will it generate curiosity for the reader, their audience? Then they have to curate that. That's where they did the sticky notes. This Google Keep is kind of like the old index cards some of us used to remember back in the heyday of research papers. I don't know if you remember the index cards, Deb, but I remember the index cards very well.
Yeah,
and
I
then
used to all the way through school.
Yeah. Did you color code your index cards?
I used different color ink. So yes, I did. I'm old.
All
They
right.
only had white index cards way back when. So I used different colored ink. But when you're talking about comprehend, I think that was a real wake-up call for the students doing this project. They were very good at capturing, but then when they had to actually read it and ingest it and give us back the knowledge in a very simple sticky note, that was difficult for them at the beginning of this project, because they were used to just, as you say, capturing it. But we asked them to go a step further and actually ingest that information and its newfound knowledge. So how can you give it back to us? And so that was a great exercise for them.
Yeah, we talked about this in one of our professional development groups a few years back. We said that if they were doing, back in the day, it was using Twitter. If they could do it in 144 characters, get it down to 144 characters. And today they're trying to do that with TikTok, with doing these micro videos and stuff like that, to get those comprehension thoughts down into mini pieces. Then that's the best way to do it. All right, moving on to the D for develop. So in develop, we actually started with a rubric, and I did something that I don't think they'd ever happened before with those kids, because they didn't really understand it, and they really were kind of surprised. Is I gave them the rubric and I said, okay, if you could make changes to this, what would you change? And I got this.
Crickets.
Yep. And so, Deb, can you kind of fill them in about what they were, kind of their reaction?
Well, it was crickets, because this particular group of students, who were a wonderful group to work with, had never been given the opportunity to have ownership of what it would look like to have their own direction for their project and what it needed to look like and what ingredients it needed to have, from just a basic project to an exemplary project. And as they moved through the project and learned more of the tools, whether it was the research databases or the note taking, as they learned more, they better understood the ingredients from just a basic project to an exemplary project. So understanding the rubric and the effort and what they put into the project determined the outcome and their grade. By the end of it, they did speak up more. I don't think they weren't comfortable with the idea of having input in their destiny. They were used to just coming to class and this is what you have to have. And that's great. And that fits sometimes. But we were trying to get them to be more creative and to take ownership so that it meant more to them. And it did take the entire project, but by the time it was done, it was an aha moment for a lot of them that what we were teaching them gave them ownership and direction, and they could decide in the end what they wanted to strive for. And I'm happy to say that they all reached for the gold.
Yep, we told them that this was your chance to pick which grade you wanted. Do you want the A? Do you want the B? Do you want the C? It's your choice, and there's the criteria for it. We used Adobe Express, but you could use other tools like Flip, which is used to be Flipgrid, Book Creator, Google Slides, iMovie, or Canva. Canva is a great tool that's we found recently that we're starting to explore in our district. So that's the D for develop. And then we'll talk about the next and last letter, which is self-evaluate. And you'll see here that we've got some students. That's one student sharing their website with us. We're going to post these on our website a little bit later. We haven't done it yet, but their projects will be there as well. You'll see their websites. And we interviewed 3 students, and it was interesting. Some of the lessons we learned back when we reflect on, that's what all this is all about, is reflecting all of that. So Deb, what was your big reflection out of all of this?
I think that more than being focused on the end project, that what they learned along the way was more valuable than their end project. And their end projects, I thought, were very good. It's the first time that any of them in that class had been exposed to anything that we taught them. So considering that, their projects were amazing, but I liked their self-reflective self-discovery. And I believe one young lady in particular comments that she made the connection. It wasn't just what she was doing in this English class. She could use this in all of her classes. And it wasn't just for this grade and this time with this teacher. These are skills now that are going to help her all the way through. And I just have to say that was also the really great thing about working with Palm Beach State College. A lot of our students will matriculate to Palm Beach State College. So I liked the opportunity to work with her, with our students, so that they see what's coming. And even though they snicker at the crap test, it's a really great tool for them and they know what's coming. So I thought the process was invaluable. And I'm anxious actually to work with some of those same students again this year.
Yeah, there was a lot of lessons learned. I think I felt like we could have given more time to actually practice things. And so we kind of like raced through it. We went through this in 6 weeks, meeting once or twice a week with them. And I felt like sometimes I felt like we were racing to teach them something without giving them practice time. But I think they have actually picked it up and learned from it and actually will share it. All right, so we're going to switch gears here, and we are going to start talking about the elementary version. And with me is our great friend and colleague is Toni Lipscher, who had to race home because her internet at her district building was actually out. And Toni, we appreciate you joining us through great effort. So are you relaxed now?
I'm much more relaxed at this moment. Yes, thanks.
So we're going to start sharing with you the elementary fines version of that. And the QR code will take you to the website and also the bit.ly. And so those are actually in your program. You can click on those links to actually go to the program and stuff like that. So here's a question for you. What is the difference between fines secondary and fines elementary? And that's kind of an interesting question. So we basically came up with a table to kind of help you figure that out. So basically, this is kind of what we did. So I kind of talked with a few media specialists. Toni, feel free to chime in here. We started talking about what it would look like at kindergarten with maybe a simple search, a first grade project, which was a web quest, a second grade project, which could be a class project, a third grade project, which also could be a class project, fourth grade was an individual project, and a fifth grade project, which is individual project. And the reason why it says student choice is that they can pick which kind of device or program they wanted to develop their project. We kind of guided them through. So we actually have some different projects. Do you want to add anything to this, Toni?
Sure. As we are elementary, we need to be a little more animated, and we need to take things, we need to define things in smaller chunks. Chunking it is really, really important. And when you start with, for instance, the little kindergartners, now you've got to talk their language. You have to be a detective. You have to put on your focus goggles. You have to do all those things to get them motivated and talk in their language. And when you chunk it very small into small little units, and then as you build through elementary, give them more independence and student choice. I think that's the best way to approach the elementary fines addition part of this.
So we're going to actually go through and show you 3 different grade levels, what they've done in using the fines. Just like what we've done with the secondary version, we were related to books. And so we actually decided to use, if I can do this without it fading out, Booked on STEM books, which is our next session. And she's got that too. Good for you. That's the one book I didn't even grab because I have it electronically and stuff like that. So we used Now and Ben for kindergarten. We used The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind for third grade, talking about energy sources. And we used Star Stuff, which is a third grade book and Booked on STEM, but we actually used it for fifth grade because they were getting ready to take their FCAT, or not their FCAT, their Florida Science Standard test, which is a tested benchmark. And so we wanted to reinforce that. So that's another thing is besides building on literature, we want to align to standards. And Toni, why don't you talk about how the teachers reacted to doing these class projects?
The teachers were very excited to be a participant in this, especially because they don't usually get the opportunity to do projects like this. They don't have the opportunity to do research and to teach research skills because they've got so many things on their plate already with their benchmarks and their standards. So they were very, very excited. They loved that we were going to be starting with a picture book based on, basing our research on literature, being able to have them create questions by just, for instance, looking at the cover of a book and coming up with any questions about what they thought that the book was going to be about. And then going through the steps, teaching them how to use keywords, teaching them how to use your Booleans and ending up in a project again that they don't have time to do in their classrooms.
Yeah. So it was kind of good to teach them those skills because they can go back to their classrooms and use those skills in their classrooms as they do other projects. The kindergarten class, we decided to actually do a project because they were a gifted kindergarten class and they were very articulate, as you're going to hear from one of the kindergartners a little bit later. She's adorable. and they were all really good projects, and they came up with their own inventions. So you're going to be wanting to stick around for that in a few minutes. So we always want to make sure that they're aligned to the standards, focus on learning, and focus on reading as well. And so that's the F for focus. So let's talk about the I for investigate here. So we decided to break the Boolean operators down. Oh, sorry, I'm a happy clicker. The Boolean operators, we actually developed this handout to because we wanted to introduce the Boolean operators as they learn to grow from kindergarten to 5th grade. So in kindergarten, it was keywords. For 1st grade, since they're doing addition in 1st grade, learning to use the plus sign, adding 2 terms together to reinforce the addition. In 2nd grade, it's using the minus sign. And by the way, all of this information came from a BrainPop video. And I used it, and it's amazing. I was like, I can't believe I learned this from my BrainPop video. And so we did things like using the quotes, using the parens, and then in 5th grade, they use it all. And I think the kids really took to using those operators because I don't think they ever thought about it. They just type a word, and oh, there's nothing there. Because it's like 2 billion hits. Toni?
Yes, and so in the investigate part, we did learn some really cool things about our databases, and the younger ones, K through 2, will love PebbleGo. They're going to love your BrainPop Junior, although the Boolean operators is in regular BrainPop and not in BrainPop Junior. But they love using their PebbleGo, and there's so many resources there for them to use. So for instance, when we were doing our kindergarten and we were looking at Now and Ben and talking about inventions, and so we were able to talk about and kind of go through PebbleGo and pull up inventors, inventions, and see what actually came up and how they could investigate more types of things if they wanted to. And I felt like using the who, the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, and why, that helped a lot. And we also learned a very good, interesting distinction between World Book Kids and World Book Student, and how that could add more information and dig deeper into our topic.
Yeah, that was really important because we learned that some of the topics were not available in World Book, and so we had expanded to World Book Student to match our project and stuff like that. All right, we've got 8 minutes, so we've got to get through a little bit more here. So note taking or notes, and I promise you I won't happy click. So note taking was really different because kindergartners, they had something simple. 3rd graders, we had a worksheet for them, and the 5th graders actually kind of combined forces and took pages with notes. But we wanted to make sure to use it whatever's comfortable with them. If it was paper and pencil, that's great. If it's using the Chromebook, they did that as well. So 3rd graders and 5th graders kind of used the Chromebooks. The kindergartners, we kind of kept it simple. And you'll see an example of their sheets they actually did for their inventions. Toni?
And I will say that if anyone out there is wondering kind of what would you do if you had a kindergarten 1st or 2nd grade class, using graphic organizers as a class to combine all your information. If you do that as a class, then you're getting all that information using your graphic organizers, and everyone's coming up and being able to kind of shout it out if you use Lumio or just raise the hand or a paper and pencil. So there's a lot of ways to note take even in the earlier grades.
Yeah, so it's really simple. So I want to get to the examples here. So I'm going to switch gears here, and we're going to go to the develop. So in develop, we developed a rubric based on finds. So that rubric is going to be on the website, so you can see it on that website and stuff like that. You can use it on a checklist. And so we did different examples. So basically, we did a Flipgrid activity in the, it was still Flipgrid, so I'm going to say Flipgrid. It was Flipgrid in kindergarten. It was, let's see, Google Slides in 3rd grade, and then we did Flipgrid again in 5th grade. And this was new to them, wasn't it, Toni?
It was. I use a lot of different technology, but hadn't used Flip with them yet. So they were really excited to learn that kind of way to present their information.
Yeah, we actually created some preview videos for them to get started and showed them. The kindergartners, since they hadn't done it, we actually helped them do it. But they still did some really cool jobs. And let's get to the S so we can see those projects and get some time for questions and answers if you have some. If you have questions, feel free to add them into the chat at this time. Let's go to S for self-evaluate. We wanted to use a checklist so they would know what to do. We used Flipped. We interviewed the students. We reflected with your students. I always like to reflect with the students and then always tie it back to the literature. So, Toni, you want to add anything to self-evaluate for this part?
Also, if you've already taught them some kind of, like I had already taught Google Slides to my third graders, so that was a great way for them to, they already knew the technology piece, so all they had to do was put their information in, and they were able to make really wonderful Google Slide presentations on their project.
All right, so let's see some of these student projects. So, Lisa, if we could play the first video.
Hello, my name is Audrey. Today I'll be talking about my dog robot. So the dog robot does when your mom says, clean your room, the kid says, dog robot, clean my room. And then the dog robot does it in a quick second. Bye.
She's adorable, isn't she? And so the 5th grade project was on, they had to do a commercial for their planet. And that was an interesting project. And a lot of them wanted to keep editing and they play with all the different things. And so let's show an example of this Neptune space cruise.
Hop on our hypersleep-equipped cruise and go for the 2.846 billion mile trip to Neptune to go surfing on its liquidy surface and possibly see it rain diamonds on this 599 mile wide planet. Bring your oxygen tank spacesuit as well as your puppy coat, because out here it's negative 370 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want the full orbit trip, you'll be here for 165 years.
If you purchase a ticket now, you'll be the first person there and you'll be Elon Musk. You can also hitch a ride on the Voyager 2. Book your trip today or be blown away by the 1,200 mile per hour winds.
So that's kind of it. Toni, you have any final thoughts?
I do. As you know, John Long is very brilliant and creative. And so he has inspired me. I never, kind of used literature to boost and front load my research. And so I'm about to do a project with 5th grade on the Holocaust. And I found a new book called The Whispering Town. And I'm going to be reading this to them first to create questions and inspire conversation before I start my little project with them on the Holocaust.
Oh, that's awesome. So, literacy is such an important thing. And in so many schools, they have to focus on that so much. It's like, well, this is something we need to include into the research process. And as librarians or classroom teachers, now you've got some really cool tools to show them. You can show these handouts as presentations, but they're there for you. If you have any questions, I put our contact information right there. Feel free to email us. We're expanding the funds in the elementary project to 2 other schools this fall, and we're going to do some live stream. We've got some more resources coming about how to validate sources, because I think that's very important for kids to learn how to search for the right answers and the right information. So thank you for joining us. And don't forget to check out the Kumo space and the exhibit hall. And thank you for coming. Lisa? You're muted, Lisa.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Toni, for a fabulous presentation. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go. Present my screen. Make sure you check out all the amazing sessions that EdTech has for us today. There's lots of wonderful learning going to go on. And thank you to the whole EdTech team for putting this fabulous conference together. Have a great rest of your day.